Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump have made different promises when it comes to dealing with inflation and helping your bottom line. But which strategy do economic experts think will work the best for you? Well, joining us now is John Norris. He's longtime chief economist for Oakworth Capital, oversees investments and thought leadership. Also hosts a podcast, by the way. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you, Mike. How you been doing?
I'm doing well. Just for folks to know, he's been a frequent contributor on several financial news networks, and we want to say up front, his analysis based on his expertise, not any party bias. But with that said, let's start with former President Trump. He believes that energy is one way to ramp up the economy, ramp up domestic drilling, but also he's talking about bringing back tariffs to jumpstart the economy. That has gotten some pushback. Yeah. What would be the real-time impact of bringing back the tariffs?
Well, let's just put it this way. Trade has always been good for economic activity. A tariff is an impediment on trade. There's no way around it. So tariffs in and of themselves are not necessarily going to engender economic growth. Now, if the president wants to protect a few maybe sensitive industries in order to make sure our defense is shored up, that's one thing. Let's say that that's going to work. But just simply putting tariffs on products from China, Mexico, what have you, isn't necessarily going to propel the U.S. economy at all.
If you try to cripple China, and I don't know if you can with tariffs, but if you try to...
No, I don't think you can either.
So are there other ancillaries or the trickle-down effect of that?
Well, the thing is, right now with China, China's got their own issues right now. We try to cripple them right now. The Chinese are doing a very good job of crippling themselves. They have an absolutely horrible financial system mess. They have a real estate housing mess right now. And they've got a demographic mess. The one-child policy for 2 generations is really going to cause some pretty significant economic headwinds for the People's Republic. So we don't need to do anything in order to slow down the Chinese. They're going to do that by themselves.
Now, that one issue is actually impacting Japan as well. Both candidates have talked about no taxes on tips or overtime. Vice President Harris has also promised $25,000 for qualified first-time home buyers. How feasible is that under current budgets?
Well, I would tell you the thing with that is it's well-intentioned. However, when I take a look at things and just look at supply-demand curve graphs and just being kind of a nerd like an economist like I am, what that does is really, all that does is goose the demand side of the equation. It doesn't help with the supply of houses out there, just the potential demand for them. So if you shift that demand curve out to the right, all you're going to be doing is making housing even that much more expensive. So that's kind of one of those, oh, gee whiz, it's a great idea for a lot of people. It sounds fantastic, but it's not really going to alleviate the problem.
So you're helping out some, but at the expense of others.
That's right.
Okay. All right. It's not sexy to talk about, if you will, but the deficit. I don't even know what the number is now. It's just astronomical. But explain why people should care, particularly our government leaders.
Oh, well, listen, at $35 trillion and counting, and right now the administration's budget estimates from Table S2, by the way, if you're reading at home, suggests that the budget deficit is going to increase an additional $19 trillion over the next decade. Wow. There is no way that won't have some kind of impact on the economy, whether or not it be through higher interest rates, crowding out other investment, but more than likely than that, we're not going to be able to see a lot of fiscal stimuli coming out of Washington over the next 10 years, at least not what we've become accustomed to since the pandemic. So that right there is going to slow down the economy, because there's the old equation, C plus I plus G plus or minus net exports, and C is government purchases. If the government can't borrow enough or can't borrow as much to buy stuff, it's going to slow down the economy.
All right, real quickly, we got to wrap up. I'm told to wrap. Just yes or no answer. Okay, in your history of studying this in presidential elections, is it doomsday if either candidate gets in office?
That's a tough one, isn't it? An easier question. Now, Mike, I will tell you this. Historically, I've always said that politicians get too much credit for the good times and too much blame for the bad. Okay. And so I would say that's probably the case in 2025. And whoever wins in a couple of weeks is probably going to be facing a somewhat slowing economy anyhow.
All right. That is Chief Economist for Oakworth Capital and all kinds of titles. John Norris, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.